I travel for work more than I'd like, but no matter how often I leave, this house is the one place that still feels like mine. I chose it for its quiet street, its old oak tree out front, and the sense of peace I couldn't find anywhere else. Everything inside is familiar: my furniture, my routines, my memories. Even when I'm gone, I keep an eye on things through the security system. It's a small ritual that reminds me I have a home worth coming back to. The only constant problem is the HOA, or more accurately, Karen, the woman who treats the neighborhood like a dictatorship she founded. She lectures people about lawn height, stares into windows to inspect blinds, and hands out violation slips like party favors. She's the type who believes her clipboard grants her legal authority. Over the years, she's targeted me more than anyone. She's shown up at my door to complain about imaginary trash violations, non-existent weeds, and a so-called mailbox alignment issue. I've lost count of how many times I've told her to stop harassing me. Each time, she pretended to be doing me some public service. Whenever I left for work trips, she'd ask too many questions: how long I'd be gone, who would be monitoring the property, and whether she should check in. I always told her no. I didn't want her anywhere near my house. My last trip was supposed to last 3 weeks. I packed, locked everything, checked the cameras, and left. But halfway through the trip, the schedule collapsed. A major meeting was pushed online, the final session cancelled, and suddenly there was no point staying another night. I switched my flight and headed home, 1 full day early. As I pulled into the driveway that evening, I noticed Karen standing across the street. Instead of the usual glare, she froze like she'd been caught doing something she shouldn't. Then she whipped out her phone and turned away, speaking quickly and glancing at me over her shoulder. I grabbed my luggage from the trunk and walked toward the front door. Before I reached the steps, a patrol car rounded the corner and parked behind my vehicle. The officer stepped out with a focused look. "Evening," he said. "We got a call about a possible break-in." Karen darted forward dramatically. "That's him," she insisted. "The homeowner is out of town. I told you that. He's trying to get inside." I stared at her, stunned by the sheer boldness. "This is my house. You know exactly who I am." She shook her head aggressively. "I don't. I've never seen him before." The officer ignored her and turned to me. "Do you have ID?" I handed him my license. He compared it with the address on the mailbox, then nodded. "All right. For everyone's safety, I'd like to walk in with you. Unlock the door and we'll verify everything together." "Fine," I said. I wasn't angry at him. He was responding to a call. But Karen stood behind him, clutching her chest like she'd uncovered a criminal mastermind. I disarmed the security system with my phone, unlocked the door, and stepped back so the officer could enter first. He crossed the threshold, took 2 slow steps, and stopped. Not a big dramatic halt, just the subtle kind that happens when something doesn't make sense. I stepped inside behind him and saw what he saw. A pair of women's running shoes sat neatly by the door. They weren't mine, and I'd left that spot empty. On the kitchen counter, a mug sat half full of cold coffee. Beside it was a plate with crumbs and an open jar of jam. None of that had been there when I left. The air smelled faintly of perfume, something floral I'd never smelled in my own home. A scarf I didn't recognize was draped over the arm of the couch. A light jacket hung on the back of a chair, like someone had thrown it there casually. The officer's tone shifted. "Is anyone supposed to be here while you're gone?" "No," I said. "No one has a key but me." He walked farther in, checking the hallway. The bathroom light came on. The door opened and closed. Then he reached the laundry room and paused again. "Sir," he called. "Come here." I followed him and felt my stomach drop. The laundry basket was full of clothes. Women's clothes. Shirts, leggings, undergarments. A towel still damp from a recent shower hung over the washer. It looked like someone had been living here. Not visiting, not checking in, living. My heart hammered in my chest. The officer looked at me with a mixture of concern and certainty. "You're absolutely sure no one has permission to be here?" he asked. "Positive," I said. "I've been gone for weeks. No one should have access." He took a slow breath, the kind someone takes when the situation changes from odd to serious. He wasn't treating it like a misunderstanding anymore. "Okay," he said. "Then you're dealing with more than a false report." I stood there trying to process the intrusion, someone showering here, eating here, sleeping here, while I was hundreds of miles away. The officer looked toward the hallway leading to the bedrooms. "From what I'm seeing," he said carefully, "it looks like someone's been living in your house." Before I could respond, I saw Karen hovering outside the doorway, her expression twisting into something between fear and guilt. And that's when it hit me. Whatever was happening here, she knew more than she was letting on. The officer didn't waste time. He moved deeper into the house with a slow, controlled pace, scanning each area like he expected someone to jump out. I followed close behind, my mind racing through every possibility, none of them good. The deeper we went, the more the sense of violation settled into my chest like a weight. Every detail felt wrong. The thermostat had been adjusted. The lights in the hallway were set to a dimmer level I never used. A throw blanket from the living room had been moved into the guest room, folded in the exact way I never fold anything. When the officer opened the guest room door, the entire truth became impossible to deny. The bed was made with sheets I didn't own. A suitcase sat open on the floor. The closet door was half open, revealing rows of women's shirts hanging neatly, as if someone had fully moved in. A makeup bag sat on the nightstand next to a half-empty water bottle. None of this was mine, and none of it belonged here. "Someone has been staying here regularly," the officer said quietly. "Not just stopping by." I swallowed hard. I left that bed stripped when I traveled. And this? He pointed to a stack of folded laundry on the dresser. "Did you leave clothes like this?" "No," I said. "That's not mine. None of it is." He took out his flashlight and checked the bathroom attached to the guest room. Hairbrush, toothbrush, lotions, shampoo. All lined up like a hotel guest who'd made themselves comfortable. It was invasive on a level I'd never imagined. The officer stepped into the hallway and called out toward the front door. "Ma'am, I need you to come inside." His tone was sharp now, not polite, not patient. Karen froze on the porch, pretending she didn't understand why she was being summoned. "I already told you," she said defensively. "This man is trespassing." "You're going to come inside," the officer repeated, "because it looks like someone has been living here, and we're going to sort out who that is." For a second, she looked like she might run. Then she reluctantly stepped in. She barely crossed the threshold before her eyes darted around the house like she was checking whether anything had been moved. The officer watched her carefully. "Are these your belongings?" he asked. She stumbled over her own words. I don't know what you're talking about." He led her toward the guest room. When she saw the open suitcase, her whole posture changed. Her shoulders tightened. She shifted her weight like someone cornered. "You've been living here," the officer said firmly. "Haven't you?" "No," she snapped too quickly. "This is part of an inspection. An official HOA inspection." "An inspection does not involve sleeping in someone's house," he replied. "Or using their shower. Or eating their food." She tried again. "The homeowner's house was at risk. I had to maintain it. It's part of the HOA's responsibility." I stepped forward. "You had no permission to be here. This is my home." She rolled her eyes dramatically. "You travel all the time. The house can't sit empty." "I was protecting property values." "Protecting property values?" the officer repeated. "By moving into his home without permission?" Karen opened her mouth to argue, but the officer had heard enough. He instructed her to sit down while he contacted his supervisor. She reluctantly obeyed, muttering under her breath about ungrateful residents. While the officer called it in, I walked to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. That was the moment everything fully clicked. Inside were groceries I never bought, organic juices, yogurt cups, salads packed neatly in containers. Someone had been stocking the fridge like it was their own. There was an open bottle of wine with a glass sitting beside it, lipstick around the rim. Every detail made my skin crawl. The officer returned. "She's being detained while we investigate. This goes far beyond a false report." He instructed her to stand. She tried to resist, insisting she was on official duty and authorized by HOA board authority, but he ignored every word. He cuffed her, recited her rights, and escorted her toward the door. As they walked out, she twisted around to look at me. "You're making a big mistake," she hissed. "You don't understand how the HOA works." "Trust me," I said. "I understand more than you think." Once she was outside, the officer returned inside with a calmer tone. "You said no one else has a key," he said. "That's right," I replied. "Just me." "Then someone had to unlock your home for her. She didn't get in by accident." A chill went through me. I opened my phone and accessed the security system. The cameras were cloud-based, recording constantly. The officer nodded as I scrolled through the footage. Weeks of clip. Dozens of motion alerts. Then I found a thumbnail that made my breath shorten. Karen, standing at my door at 1:14 a.m., 3 weeks earlier. I tapped the video. She wasn't alone. Another figure stood beside her, someone handing her a key. The angle wasn't perfect, but the truth was clear. They weren't breaking in. They were opening the door with confidence and stepping inside like they owned the place. The officer leaned over my shoulder. "Can you zoom in?" I did. Grainy, but unmistakable, a man handing her my spare key. I knew that face. It was the HOA president. Everything inside me shifted in that moment. Shock turned into anger. Anger became clarity. This wasn't just Karen acting alone. This was coordinated. Plan. They thought they could use my home while I was away, and when I came back early, Karen panicked and tried to cover it with a police call. The officer looked at me. "You'll want to save all of this. It's going to matter later." I nodded, already knowing exactly what needed to happen next. Because they hadn't just invaded my home. They had crossed a line I wasn't going to let them walk away from. The officer left with Karen in the back of the patrol car, but the damage she'd done lingered in every corner of my house. I moved from room to room documenting everything, photos, videos, timestamped. It wasn't just about proving she lived there. It was about proving how thoroughly she made herself at home. Every cabinet she rearranged, every closet she invaded, every drawer she rummaged through, none of it was hers, yet she treated it like it belonged to her. When my attorney arrived, he didn't bother hiding his disbelief. "She lived here 3 weeks?" he asked, scanning the guest room. "That's what the officer thinks," I said. "And she didn't do it alone." I pulled up the security footage again. The moment the screen froze on the HOA president handing her my spare key, my attorney let out a low whistle. "Well," he said, "that's not just trespassing. That's conspiracy." He pushed his glasses up and studied the footage frame by frame. The HOA president glanced around like someone checking to make sure the coast was clear, then placed the key in Karen's hand, whispering something before they both disappeared inside my home. The arrogance of it was unbelievable. They didn't even try to hide their faces. My attorney set his briefcase down. "You're not filing a simple complaint. You're suing the HOA, the president, and Karen individually. And with this footage, they're not talking their way out of anything." I felt the anger again, but now it had direction. This wasn't just about a violation of privacy. They had used their positions to invade my home, live off my utilities, and treat my property like some personal clubhouse. I wasn't going to let them quietly sweep this under the rug. The next morning, the HOA sent out a community alert email full of half-truths and excuses. The board claimed Karen had been temporarily safeguarding property at the homeowner's request. They alleged she was performing emergency interior inspections. They even claimed the police response was due to a misunderstanding. The message was full of lies, and every lie added fuel to what was coming next. I sent the video to my attorney. He forwarded it to the police department, then prepared a written response to the HOA demanding an emergency board meeting. Word traveled fast. By noon, dozens of neighbors knew something major had gone wrong. People gathered on sidewalks whispering, trying to get the truth out of anyone connected to the board. When the emergency meeting started, the atmosphere was tense enough to cut. Residents filled chairs, stood along walls, crowded in doorways. The HOA president sat at the front pretending to be calm, but his eyes kept darting around the room like he was looking for an escape route. He had no idea the footage was about to be played. My attorney nodded at me. I connected my phone to the projector. The moment the video began, Karen at my door, the president beside her, the key exchanging hands, the room erupted. Gasps, curses, shocked murmurs. The board members looked blindsided, and for once, the president had no script to hide behind. He stood abruptly. "This doesn't prove anything," he said, voice cracking. "This was a safety check." My attorney cut him off. A safety check does not occur at 1 in the morning. A safety check does not involve living inside someone's home, changing their utilities, forwarding their mail, or eating their food. More footage played, Karen hosting what looked like a small HOA gathering inside my living room. 3 board members were present, laughing over glasses of wine, acting like they were in a private clubhouse instead of a resident's personal home. The room turned hostile instantly. Board members in the video tried to shrink into their chairs, but the damage was done. "You used his home without permission?" one resident shouted. "You held meetings in his house? You let her live there?" another yelled. The HOA president turned pale, sweating heavily. "It wasn't like that," he stammered. We thought he was gone." "You thought I was gone so you could take my house?" I asked, my voice steady. "That's what this looks like." He opened his mouth but nothing came out. Residents demanded resignations. They demanded answers. They demanded accountability. But the president had none. Every excuse he attempted fell apart under the weight of the footage. Even the remaining board members turned on him, claiming they had no idea what he'd authorized. My attorney stepped forward. "Let me make this very clear. My client is filing civil and criminal action. This board violated boundaries, laws, and the trust of this entire community. And he intends to hold every responsible party accountable." The room exploded again, angry voices rising, the president scrambling to defend himself, people shouting that they wanted a vote to remove the entire board. The facade of authority that the HOA had built over the years crumbled in real time. When the meeting ended, the president was escorted out to avoid confrontation. Karen, now facing charges, wasn't there at all. Residents swarmed around me, apologizing, thanking me for exposing the truth, insisting they had no idea their own HOA board was capable of something this twisted. But I wasn't interested in their praise. I wanted justice. On the walk home, my attorney said quietly, "They won't survive this. The board is finished." And he was right. All the influence they had wielded so freely was gone. The community finally saw what they really were, people who abused power for convenience and control. That night, I sat in the living room, the same one they used for their little meetings, and felt the weight of everything that had happened. This place meant something to me, and they had violated it in the worst possible way. But now the truth was public. And the next step was making sure every single one of them paid for what they did. By the next morning, everything in the neighborhood felt different. The HOA president's power was gone. Karen was sitting in a holding cell, and every resident was demanding to know how long their board had been abusing authority behind closed doors. My attorney arrived early, carrying a folder thick with paperwork, lawsuits, filings, evidence packets, and the formal demand for damages. He didn't bother easing into it. "We're filing today," he said. "And we're not holding back." He laid everything out on my kitchen table, the same table Karen had used as her personal office. Every document was another nail in the coffin of the HOA. Charges for unlawful entry, unauthorized key duplication, misuse of HOA authority, utility theft, trespassing, property invasion, and violation of privacy laws. It looked overwhelming, even to me. "This is what happens," my attorney said, "when people in power think no one will challenge them." I signed each document. Every signature felt like I was reclaiming a piece of my home. By noon, the lawsuits were officially filed. And within hours, the news spread. Residents began forwarding each other links to the filings, screenshots of the charges, and clips of the security footage that had leaked from the meeting. Suddenly, the neighborhood group chat, which usually argued about grass height, was united against the board. Later that afternoon, the HOA held another emergency meeting, this time forced by resident demand. I didn't need to attend, but I went anyway. The room was packed with people who had finally seen enough. Some of them were shaking with anger. Others looked embarrassed that they'd trusted the board for so long. The HOA president sat at the front, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. His arrogance was gone. His voice trembled when he tried to call the meeting to order. My attorney didn't let him get far. He stepped forward and read aloud the full list of charges. With each line, the room erupted with disgust. When he got to the part about the unauthorized key duplication, someone shouted, "You gave her access to his home for weeks." Another resident yelled, "You thought you could rule this place like a kingdom." The president tried to defend himself, insisting it was an internal misunderstanding. But residents weren't buying a single word. They demanded his resignation immediately. When he resisted, the board members surrounding him stopped looking supportive and started looking terrified. One board member stood. "We didn't know what you were doing," she said. "We had no part in it. But we also don't want to be part of this board anymore." She placed her binder on the table and walked out. Another followed. Then another. Within minutes, the board collapsed from the inside out. The residents moved quickly to vote in a temporary committee until a formal election could be held. The president stayed seated, silent, humiliated, and alone. His grip on the community evaporated in real time. After the meeting, the sheriff's department confirmed that the case against Karen and the HOA president was moving forward. Karen faced charges for breaking and entering, illegal occupancy, and theft. The president faced charges for conspiracy, key duplication without consent, and facilitating unlawful entry. They were both finished. But the civil lawsuit was where the real consequences landed. Evidence was undeniable. The footage, the belongings, the mail forwarding, the late-night key handoff, every detail painted a picture of entitlement and abuse. The judge didn't waste time. He called their behavior one of the most blatant abuses of HOA authority he had ever seen. The ruling was everything my attorney predicted and more. The court ordered the HOA to pay for a full damages, a home restoration, utility reimbursement, the emotional distress, illegal fees, a punitive penalties for the board's misconduct. Karen and the president were personally responsible for portions of the damages. Both were banned from holding any HOA position in the county again. Karen received probation and a criminal record. The president faced a separate hearing for violating privacy laws. The HOA treasury took a major hit, and the remaining residents quickly voted to restructure the entire system. The new board sent me a letter apologizing. Not a scripted one, not a legal requirement, but an actual apology written by people who meant it. They dissolved the Interior Inspection Program permanently and adopted strict rules preventing board members from entering private property without documented consent. Once the dust settled, I turned my attention back to my home. I replaced the locks, upgraded the camera system, and repainted the guest room to eliminate every trace of the invasion. I threw out everything Karen had brought in and deep-cleaned every inch of the place. When I finished, the house felt like mine again. Not a place someone else had stolen, but a place I had reclaimed. The best part wasn't the money or the legal victory. It was the silence. The constant pressure from Karen vanished. The board disappeared from my doorstep. No more bogus violation slip. No more lectures about property values. No more eyes watching everything I did. Sometimes I sat in my living room at night, looking around, and thought about the moment the officer stepped inside and said someone had been living here. At the time, it felt like the end of something, but now I realized it was the beginning, the moment the HOA's power started to unravel. The neighborhood became calmer. People became kinder. Without Karen's constant meddling, everyone seemed lighter. Even the kids played outside more. The new board treated residents like neighbors, not subjects. And when I walked down the street, people no longer looked nervous, they looked relieved. Everything the HOA tried to take from me ended up becoming the reason they lost everything themselves. Karen called the police on me, thinking she could cover her tracks. But the officer didn't find an intruder. He found her. She tried to take my home. Instead, she lost hers, her position, her reputation, and her control over this community. As for me, I didn't just get justice. I got my peace back. And no HOA will ever take that from me again.